Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. We're the Movie Couple. I'm Dustin.
I'm Wendy, and this is our review for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Ethan Hunt and his team race against time to find the entity, a rogue artificial intelligence that can destroy mankind. I kind of wish we had masks too at the top of this review, because that would be so cool, and that is so like quintessential Mission Impossible. We have reached the end, maybe?
I always feel
Of
that when
this
they're like
franchise?
the final reckoning.
Right.
Unless it makes, box office records.
Which I feel like it will.
Yeah.
Because it's
this
Mission Impossible.
And it's a very popular franchise, and it has a very loyal fan base. One is right here next to me.
Like, I have a lot of fun in the franchise ever since, well, I think my first foray into Mission Impossible was actually the TV show.
Oh.
Which I was I was very young. My English was not very good, so I would watch it in Taiwan with the subtitles on, but I loved all the tech and the spy.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the spy, what is that called? The games and double crosses and all that stuff, the gadgets. I loved it all. And then when the first movie came out, I'm like, I gotta go watch this thing. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, I'm obsessed. And it just kind of grew from there. And so this is the final reckoning. Mission Impossible 8, years and years we've watched Tom Cruise run and hang off of buildings,
and jump
side
off
of
of
planes,
buildings.
and do crazy, incredible stunts without a stunt double because he's doing it himself. And I think at this point of the franchise, and yes, I'm still into the story, I love what they're doing, but I think a big part of it for me is to really go in there and watch the action. While I enjoy the story, I do feel like, and this is kind of my own POV of it, is I feel like I, in a way, traded story for action.
Yes, I believe later on in the franchise, that's kind of a choice that they decided to make, is the fact that, hey, you know what? Let's really focus on the big, new, awesome stunt that Tom Cruise is doing. The fact that it's really him hanging off to the side of an airplane. He's really jumping a motorcycle off of a cliff, and that kind of became the focus. And don't get me wrong, that is not a bad
It's
niche
not
to
a
fit
bad thing
into.
because they have built so many movies before this one to be able to do this. And I'm not saying the audiences don't care. Obviously we still want to go and want to see a story. So this is continuation of them continuing to basically stop this insane AI enemy called the entity. And what I enjoyed about this is also if you have invested your time in watching all the previous Mission Impossible films, that's going to pay off for you in this film, because there's a lot of really cool callbacks that you will see and that you will notice in this film. I probably myself have probably missed a couple because there's so many films, and I did not do any rewatching before we went into it, just because life is insane right now. But I think as any true fan that have watched from the beginning to now will definitely sit there and enjoy this. And I think it's also very timely to and it's not super original to say oh, big bad AI. But it makes it really interesting because it has the advantage of hacking into literally every system, including national security and weapons, like nuclear weapons, and they can hijack that and they can turn that essentially onto the humans. So Ethan and his team, I feel really were not just up against the clock, but he himself really had to kind of sacrifice his own freedom in a way. There's multiple steps that he had to do, right? You have the key, then you have to go there and get this one certain device, and then you have to have this other. There's also always multiple components that they have to kind of go and acquire, put it together to turn that into the solution. But there were just so many obstacles in their way. That's what I think really from 1 to now. Well, the last one was an introduction to what the entity is, and then now it's the obviously the continuation of how can they try to stop this thing.
Yeah, and that's something that Mission Impossible has always kind of done very well, is take this action and this spy espionage kind of vibe, but also add the heist element to it.
Yes.
With the spy high-tech gear. That's always really, really fun. And that's one thing that we're always looking forward to is, the mask reveal, the cool new weapons, the crazy stunt. And I feel, though, that something that a lot of the other previous Mission Impossibles had is that they had a lot more lighthearted fun with some of these moments and these heists. And I feel like in these last two, it just got really serious.
Oh,
and
really?
Most of Tom Cruise's lines were all spoken in this deep, it's important voice. So also hushed whispers. And everything was also, there was, I have to admit, a lot of moments in this movie that was just like, and now it's time for a flashback with some exposition.
Yeah, I think they especially did that right at the top of the film, which I didn't mind.
I kind of needed it, though.
Yeah, because it serves, it's literally like one of the characters, we won't tell you who so you can watch it in the film, but they will sit there and they will kind of like give you like bullet points of what happened in the last movie. But if you're like me, didn't have time to rewatch Dead Reckoning, then that is a really nice like catch up. You're like, caught up, got it, let's go. And I think once they get past that, the movie really does get going. But this one, and I kind of felt the same way with Dead Reckoning as well, it has some pacing issues because they felt like they need to really go in and have all these dialogues, and I felt like sometimes they really didn't serve a purpose. Where we're kind of like, all right, cool, got it, you established this, and then they drop the ball, and because it never gets picked up again, you're like, well, what happened with that conversation?
Oh, they pick it up really quickly to where there really isn't much of a payoff at it. I feel like this movie's almost 3 hours long. I feel like there really could have been some moments in between the awesome action scenes that we all want to see that they could have trimmed, cut, and shrank it down to at least a good 2.5, maybe 2:35.
Yeah, I really think they could have done it because at times you felt it, but I would say after the second big action piece, big stunt sequence, I think after that for me it was kind of smooth sailing.
Yeah.
But I think it was getting to that where I was like, ooh, I'm feeling the time a little bit there. Like it was starting to get a little too talky for me. But I want to kind of talk about the humor because you said like the other ones were funnier and this one was too serious. I kind of have an opposite opinion of that.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I feel like the Mission Impossible movies have always found a place to insert humor because sometimes you do need that, and it makes it like playful, like and spies and all that stuff. Like it can be fun and it's sexy, and they put that in there. And I think the last few movies have really been like a really good example of that. I would say from like 1 to probably 5 or even 6. But I feel like, and I felt the same way about Dead Reckoning, is that they do have humor in there, but it felt really different than the previous ones. It felt more tongue-in-cheek, like it's a whole different kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
And then for me, I like these actors individually, but together on screen as their characters, I didn't like their chemistry, and that's Grace and Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
Both really good actors, and on screen, obviously they look fantastic, and their performances is great, but there's this like weird energy chemistry that they're not really gelling for me. Like it's not believable, which is kind of saying a lot because like Tom Cruise is such an experienced actor. Like I should be able to buy into anybody's like chemistry, actor or actress.
Yeah.
Playing off of him, but this I just couldn't fully buy into for some reason.
Well, I also didn't really buy their relationship back in Dead Reckoning.
Yeah.
I feel like Ethan Hunt made her like a part of the team really fast and was like, I would die for anyone on my team, and that includes you, Grace. And I'm like, you don't even know her, and you're already willing to die for her?
Yeah.
And I just felt like the relationship that they had, the trust that they had, was never really earned.
Right.
In a sense.
Right.
I mean,
because Elsa earned it.
Yeah.
She really, and maybe partially I'm still salty that they killed her off. Like, it pissed me off. I was like, what the heck? I loved her in the movies. So, in any case, I would say between that pacing and some of the dialogue, that's where kind of I was like, ooh, I wish like it was a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
But again, I kind of flipped my mindset going into this. Like, I just wanted to see the action. You guys already saw in the trailers what he did with the biplane, which is incredible for one, and two, super dangerous. So it's great to watch on an IMAX. Like if you're gonna go experience this movie, like make sure it's an IMAX or a large format so you can like really enjoy how that's shot, and it's seriously incredible. But my favorite one action scene. It's actually the one that came before that, which is like the deep sea.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty
one,
cool.
the water
But
one.
One of the problems with, even though I have to admit, yes, that one was a lot more fun because it was like a mission. It was almost like, when you play a video game, it was kind of like a video game level, and you're
The
seeing
one
him.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That he has to move through. But I feel like when you were saying that the movie had that comedy, the comedy that it comes from is a little bit more of laughing at the ridiculousness of some of the things that happened, especially in that scene. Where you're just like, no way. Okay. They're going with not quite as bad as like plugging your nose in the Megalodon 2 when he's under the deep sea diving.
Oh man!
But a little bit of that to where you're laughing at the ridiculousness of how he gets out of the situation. But it's still one of the most fun action scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. It's like towards the end of that action piece.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah,
while we're in
still...
it, while we're in the thick of it, it's a solid, really good. Like it's one of those ones where it makes you want to hold your breath underwater with them.
Yeah.
But you can't because he's also got a suit on. So, but in any case, I really enjoyed all the action, nonetheless, because this production has every single actor in it doing cardio. Literally every single actor.
Everyone's running
doing cardio, yeah. And of course, I love the team, the dynamic of the team. It's really incredible to watch. So that's another reason why I love the franchise. It's kind of that chemistry and dynamic in the team, especially between, I would say, like Ethan and Benji is definitely like the one to watch for because they've been, teammates for such a long time. And in any case, it's really interesting to think that this could be the last Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise himself. I don't want to believe it. I just don't want to believe it. Like right now, I can't see them doing another Mission Impossible without him.
Yeah.
Or him not wanting to do another one.
I'm also curious now that he's kind of passed the torch. They could have. Tom Cruise could produce the reboot of Mission Impossible.
I think they would just redo the whole thing because. No, I don't want to say too much because I don't want it to spoil it for anybody watching. I don't want you guys to kind of make theories of how the movie ends by the way we're talking about it. So with that said, I think we're going to go ahead and give you guys our rating for Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. Look, I had fun with this. I wanted to go in. I wanted to enjoy all the action pieces. I wanted to hear the soundtrack. Oh, the soundtrack. It's good, but the other one was better.
Yeah.
Dead Reckoning's soundtrack was just a little bit better. But when that theme song kicks in, you're excited. Your adrenaline's pumping. You're in there. I wish the pacing was a bit tighter. I felt like the writing could have been better, but I will take it because I was still entertained for almost 3 hours because this movie is just under the 3. So, and also you don't need to sit through the full credit because there was nothing at the end. So you don't, if you
don't wait for an end credit.
Yeah, if you had too much soda during this movie and you're like, oh my gosh, you feel free to leave and come back and finish watching the credits if you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning a check it out.
For me, I thought this movie was a lot of fun. It was a little long for my taste, and I feel like pretty much the same. There were some of the dialogue and some of the pacing was a little choppy and a little slow, but the action, the intensity, there's moments where you're like, because you're waiting to see what happens. I think this is still a fun movie to see in the theaters. I'm going to give it a matinee it.
There you have it. That is our thoughts on Mission Impossible 8. Do you think there could be another one? Will Ethan Hunt be back for another installment, even though this is called The Final Reckoning and supposedly they're done? Who knows? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below once you've seen the film. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next review.